Hi, everybody. I'm here with Andre, and he just gave me a little tidbit of something he's studying, and it sounds wonderful. So
Yeah.
tell us about Venus.
Yeah. So this is just something I've been looking into in the last few weeks to try to do the number crunching, and especially what I do whenever I'm learning something new. And by the way, I'll credit the person. This is a friend of, he's an astrologer friend, both very good astrologers. The astrologer that was on my channel, Patrick Watson, a good friend of his, Nick Dagan Best, has done a lot of work on Venus and taking apart all the cycles and so forth. So whenever I see something that I think, okay, is there something to this? I started to look for the patterns in my chart, and sure enough, I found them, and I found them pretty quickly. And those are the things that immediately encourage me to look further, because I'll say, well, if it's happening to me this much, there's probably something to it. But one of the things, for example, that is a very clever observation is that Venus, being a natural planet of relationships, in its connection to Libra, it's well known, it's Aphrodite. There are a lot of patterns that Venusian and relations, they go hand in hand. So one of the things is that Venus does this thing in the sky that has an 8-year track. It does this really neat pentagram thing. It goes through these 5 points, and over the course of 8 years, minus a little bit, it's just a little short of 8 years, it completes the cycle. And so it's in a way unsurprising that there's statistical analysis out there that relationships tend to last about 8 years.
8 years.
That's why, because the Venus, it burns out. At the end of 8 years, that's enough. Now, if your relationship keeps going, it's an endorsement of the relationship. And I'll give you an example that they gave that is fascinating. That Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, they got together on the start of a Venus cycle, a retrograde Venus cycle, and then exactly 8 years later was when they got married. The problem was that didn't last either. It only lasted a few more years. But right. You see these patterns where those moments are really important, right? The problem now for some people, though, is that if it's not working well, it could end. Well, it turns out, it caught my eye immediately. You look at the July, August, September period of 2015, which is exactly 8 years from now. And this is the fascinating thing about Venus. It goes back 8 years later to exactly where it was, in the same sign and in the same retrograde. It's just like a carbon copy. Now, that's when Trump went down the escalator and when he started his thing. Now, back then, he had Venus in Leo, which is his rising sign, which is putting him in front of the world. It's excellent. Jupiter was there, too, to really enhance it, right? But you also see Saturn in a square, and that is a warning, because Saturn in a square, yes, it's the foundation of the chart, but Saturn is pretty dangerous. Be careful where you go with that. Anyways, here we are 8 years later. There's no Jupiter now. Now it's Venus by itself. The Saturn is in a very unfriendly place, different part of the chart. To me, it feels so much more like he's undoing the end of this thing, the crash and burn as a result of 8 years of basically, lying and scheming and wheeling, dealing and doing awful things.
Then and that's before the voting happens.
Sorry, the which?
It's before the voting.
It's before. Yeah, no, it's before. It's now, as in this period is critical. Now, another thing that is very interesting is this Venus retrograde cycle we're going into now for the next 3 months, roughly into September, starting in July, is the American legal house. And it has the feeling, retrograde is where you're going back to look to do something. And to me, this matches really well with the intensity that Jack Smith has been showing, because it seems like every day now we're hearing another witness and another, you heard about the Giuliani thing, right?
Yes, yeah.
By the way, that guy's toast. His chart, he's right. He's getting nailed by Saturn. No wonder he's going there to beg. They say his prophet means, can you please, because he probably realizes they're going to put him in the
But if they find out he's lying, they can throw him in the jail.
Exactly, right. So the Saturn is very, very unfavorable to him, but the entire matter of the legal house getting all this Venus retrograde energy, which is a kind of going back and going over and then going forward again, feels like a great intensification. So isn't it strange that it's during this period that Fani Willis has said that she'll probably be indicting? I would not be
At
surprised. One bit.
25, you said 25.
No, 23. What do you mean?
Oh, I thought you said this Venus thing was happening in 25. No, I'm sorry.
No, it's happening now.
It's
Now.
happening in 23.
Like it happens.
Thank you. I don't know why I thought I heard.
Like, okay, so if you 15 plus 8, 23, it's this year. And you know, and it's not made up. Like what is really fascinating about Venus is if you go back another 8 years to 2007, you see it in the same place again. It's right there, and then it keeps repeating. So for people for whom it had a lot of impact, they see the coming around of that, right? I don't see, what's Trump going to get here other than major problems. Wow. Now, it is true. There's one thing about Trump that I got to put this in a video too to explain the astrology. The reason he continues to be popular with his base, with his people, that follow his base, is because he's got mostly very difficult transits, except that there's one, the Neptune transit, which is the popularity planet. So he's got a sector that's still there.
The delusional too, right?
They're delusional. But I noticed in my analysis when I looked at next year, even that comes under tremendous pressure in the middle of the year. And there's a point there. I'll be making the video where you can see partly what I made already in the previous video. In the late spring of 2024, that is really rough territory. And at the worst possible time, because he's in the heart of the election season and all the rest, right? So
right.
For those people
was he the only one you looked at? Did you take a look-see at Putin too? Well,
Putin, I did look at Putin. I mean, isn't it curious that we've been saying this about how his prospects are dropping? And right on cue, like, I don't know if you noticed that, well, I may have mentioned it in a previous time, the June period when the submersible went down. I mean, talk about a big mistake that was, because they went down on the right on the Saturn station in the sign of the ocean. I mean, any astrologer would have said, don't do this now. Bad idea, right? But same with Putin. It's not favorable for Putin. And Putin's chart is another one in a way like Trump's, where he's getting pressure at the beginning part of the sign. There's a long way to go here. This is not getting better. This is going to continue being a problem for him next year, the year after. I would be amazed if Putin makes it all the way to the middle of the decade. I really would, in terms of being in charge of Russia. Yeah. Really amazed, because the cycles are definitely tilting negative, for sure.
And, he looks weak, and they go after blood over there.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Although, the one thing about Russia, though, remember that, I mean, if you get a Prigozhin instead of Putin, he's worse. It's like, which thug do you want? This thug or the bigger thug?
Although I do think Trump would have people killed and stuff if he could.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. For sure. For entertainment purposes only, but you can take it seriously.
So Dan, artist, painter, said an interesting question. What impact, if any, does the reversal of affirmative action for college admissions have on the 2024 election? Well, we were just talking about that when I signed on. And the Reverend over on MSNBC, he said, they talk about the Constitution and all this. Their Constitution and the Supreme Courts were the ones who made Black Americans 3/4 of a human.
Exactly.
And so my native tribe have struggled. They have the white privileged male energy has hurt. Cities, Tulsa, when they were finally having their own community, what they do, they go in and burn them down. And this was, we're talking less than 100 years. So to just say, oh yeah, well, you guys can handle it. I think it's going to make the young people mad enough, besides Roe versus Wade, to go out and start voting.
I would agree. Yes, it's yet another issue, right? You take the gun issue, you take the women's rights, you bring that into it. That's an example where, African Americans, by and large, vote Democratic. You are encouraging them more. You're encouring them to do more of that. Yeah. So you're increasing the numbers. Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Well, the thing 100%. Is too, is that, we were discussing, had the young people come out and vote, a lot of people didn't vote. Trump won because people didn't come out and vote.
Well, this is the key, though. This is you're hitting the nail on the head, and that Democrats the reason we're in this jam is democratic laziness. And honestly, we got to stop that because it is so costly. All these 12th century jurists that we're dealing with are because Democrats just didn't bother to show up because, well, it's not that big a deal. To this day, I'm stunned that more people, voted for Obama in 2008 than for Hillary in 2016. Where's the logic in that? You're putting your life at risk. I mean, literally, you're leaving on the table things that are going to really hurt you.
Well, now they're feeling it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the Reverend has said in the past, he makes the argument, if you don't vote Democratic, like which party always brings more rights to more people? It's always the Democrats. You don't see the Republicans doing this every step of the way, go back to the 1920s. It's been like that since then. That's the truth. Right. So if you don't vote Democratic, it doesn't happen. And that includes the idea that sometimes you'll say, well, yeah, but if I vote the Congress and it'll take longer. It doesn't matter. We got to be patient, show up, and keep putting them in there. Well, your odds are always better. That things.
I hate to say it, but your voice is in the vote.
Yeah, exactly. It's the total truth. And the more people realize that and vote in every election and every opportunity they get, the sooner we're going to solve the problem. And you have to be patient because in politics it takes years, but there's no way around it. I mean, unless you're going to propose, we're all going to, like the Republicans, we're all going to take up weapons and start shooting at each other. I don't think that's a good idea, honestly.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
Yeah, but
no, I don't think so either.
I had a nurse friend. So let's see, I retired in 2004. So probably maybe not even 40, 50 years ago. She was a brilliant math student back in, Mississippi. And she won an award that they took all of the high-end math students to a fair. There was a big fair on a Tuesday, I think. And they took the bus over. She was thrilled. She was the only Black girl there. And when she went in, she was going in, they said, hey, we don't allow the N-word here. And they said, listen, she's a student that won the award for one of the highest, they reluctantly let her in. She gets in line to go to a ride, and the guy running the line said, hey, somebody get that in out of here. She went back to the bus and laid in the bus till everybody was done. That wasn't even 50 years ago. But no, Congress says we need to fasten our bootstraps and move on with it.
Yeah, that's true. It's true that I mean, look at the current conflict we're in is blatantly, it's totally obvious that it's a racial conflict. There's no question.
Oh, yeah.
All these aggrieved white men snowflakes, because it's what they are, right? Because they pretend to be these testosterone fountains of some kind. Why don't you just, if you have a problem with your life, solve it? I mean, they'll say, well, women don't like us anymore. Women are people. Why don't you just learn to talk with people? What's the problem here, right? Why are you blaming everybody else? This is what Trump is feeding on, telling them, the world is against you and they're taking away. What are they taking away? What? I mean, it's unbelievable, but it's because they think it's Asians and it's Mexicans and, the brown people are coming in to take over. That's why they're upset. It's the same as the Civil War in 1865. That was like blatant, we're going to have a slavery empire. And, they were opposed and they lost. But by the way, I'll say it again. I've said it many times. Don't panic. We've had problems before. We won last time. We're going to win again.
We're going to win again.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And, no even Congress voted against the Native Americans, the Navajo tribe, about the water because you signed a treaty or a contract. Hello, do you know how many treaties and contracts the white men broke on the Native Americans?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
It's too many to count.
Too many to count. I know.
But no, you guys signed it. So no good water for you.
I know. Yes. I know. It's endorsing the oppressors. It's just not a good idea. Right?
Yeah. Cheryl says, is there anything that we can do as a group to help make the next 2 decades less tumultuous, possibly less painful to the world? I think everybody's kind of doing that already. Part of it is if you think about tuning into, invisible spiritual energies that are underpinning everything, one of the things to do is stay positive. Always keep in mind, this is the way you want the country to go, and hold the belief that it's possible. A lot of minds doing that is extremely helpful. And then
part of the action that results is that you go and vote, you encourage other people to vote. All of that is a literal force. That's what you do. You do it now and you do it constantly for the next period of time. That's how change happens. Otherwise.
And actually, except for Justice Thomas, the Supreme Court actually voted for our voting rights. Finally.
Yes. Which is that's another thing that
was
it's not all. Yeah, I mean, now they sort of went back again, and it'll be mostly conservative rulings. But it's kind of curious. I have a feeling that I didn't expect Gorsuch to be sort of right in there with Alito, and they're the worst. Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas, right?
Yes.
They're another. I didn't expect Kavanaugh, and especially Kavanaugh, the beer drinking, whatever, a molester, whatever he was doing. Think, wow, he's one of the ones with common sense. It must be that Roberts is working on them or something. But
I saw Kavanaugh kind of calming down and actually a little bit nervous and afraid. Well, so I think they think we're going to come in with guns blazing. If we get another Democratic House, etc., that's when they're going to say Congress, the Supreme Court has no right to take monies. We're going to do some overseeing. That's when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Even though I don't know if you heard Biden today, but he was saying that he's not for expanding the court because it would make it too political, which I see his argument.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
he treads carefully. Have you noticed that?
He does, yeah. Because I mean, the whole thing with the Supreme Court, at minimum, it's a total ripoff. I mean, how could Mitch McConnell do what he did? And I remember Lindsey Graham, the South Carolina liar, saying, "Oh, I would never ever again. If that happens on the year of the election, I would never." And he went ahead and did it anyway. I mean, total hypocrisy. And they put in
right before the election.
Barrett. Yeah, exactly, right before. So I mean, they're basically the GOP. It's a party that operates in bad faith.
They talk from both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, they're bad faith actors. Like, I mean, when you start saying that the good ones are people like Chris Christie, you kind of, this guy was shutting down the bridge. I mean, come on,
That guy doesn't have a chance in hell of winning. They're only putting him on the news because he's telling the truth about Trump, but he still won't win.
No, he won't, but he's an effective speaker, though, around the,
but DeSatan's not going to win either.
No.
Oh my God. Did you see him at that event?
I didn't.
Someone stood up and said, "I think you're one of the worst." I'll find it and send it to you. I think you're a fascist, something. I don't know what all. It was a woman. You can't see her. She's from the side. He goes, "Well, how many here came here to vote for me?" One person raised their hand. One person. He goes, "Wow, this is uncomfortable."
I guess I bet you anything that after it's over, he will scream at his handlers and say, "How could you put me in front of this crowd?
Why didn't you pay for more people for me?"
I know. It's
so like he ran and got his patent leathers and went home.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like how Trump now goes on Fox and says, "Well, that was a hostile interview," because they actually ask him.
Yeah, he talks trash about Fox now.
Yeah, of course, because Fox doesn't like him. Fox would prefer that he didn't win because they know the liabilities for them, because they know that they want to keep viewers and the viewers want to talk positive about Trump, but they know that he is a really bad candidate. So they would love it if they could get rid of him. And by the way, I mean, you got to say one thing about Fox. I keep saying this, that on Fox, you have the really awful people, and yet they have programs. Like I saw this program with just a clip. It wasn't the entire program. I saw about 5 minutes. It was filled with, I think Janine Pirro and, really Republican, yappers. And there was this Democratic woman, and she was putting them to shame. She was basically saying, "Look, all I can tell you is the numbers tell you if you run Trump, you will lose. It's that simple. Look at these polls." And they were all like silent and going, "Yeah, well, that kind of makes sense." Because they wanted to talk about Kamala. And she was saying, "Well, Kamala and Biden are running together, and explain to me how this works. You're not going to get the votes, right? So then, you'll lose." And they didn't have anything to say. They let her talk. So in other words, you're getting the other side. And then you get the guy talking with Trump. He was very direct. I mean, he gave Trump such a hard time, because he was saying, "Look, you said all these people. Now you say they're all idiots." That when
he said you called Barr a fat pig or something?
Yeah. And then Trump said, "Well, those people, yeah, but 10 times more people like me." Bear should have asked him, can you name a few? I mean, I just named 10. Can you name a few of these people that you say?
And did you hear Christie when he had called Christie a fat something?
I know.
Christie said, obviously, this man hasn't looked in the mirror.
Yeah, he said, well, like he's some Adonis. Christie's funny. You have to give him credit. Christie's
Yeah,
really
it's a
funny.
shame, though. He's a crook like the rest of them.
Yeah, no, there's no question. But this is the thing. I mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, at least temporarily. So,
Yeah. Well, he'll help put some dents in, and maybe, hopefully.
mhm.
So Ness wants to know, any thoughts about the sun opposite Pluto squaring the nodal axis later in July? Some astrologers are expecting a major leader to have a great fall.
It's possible. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty good in that opposition also coincides with the Venus going retrograde. And separately, I forgot to mention that something Nick Dagan-Best figured out as well is that Putin doesn't like that Venus cycle. Putin and that retrograde Venus has been associated with all kinds of problems and changes that came out of the blue. So yes, that's a good observation.
That's great.
Well
Thank
made.
you, Ness.
Yeah.
She always
Mhm.
has these good ones. And Andreina said, Andre, what is Zelensky's outlook right now in the
Well,
coming months?
wouldn't you say that it's looking pretty good?
I think so, but they're not winning greatly, but
No, but I mean, in war, you win what you can win, and I would say, and when you look at Zelensky's, the major change was in March. That was the big switch, and it's pretty obvious that things have gotten worse for Putin and better for Zelensky. So that's basically it. Now, how much better? You got to give it some more time because
well, there's hundreds of Russian soldiers. They're demanding them to come back. Russia is, and they're not.
no, they have a morale problem. I mean,
they're giving up. They don't want to go back. I don't blame them.
It's a tough situation when you run a war and one side is fighting for their lives and the other side sees it as an option. That's not a good thing because they're not going to be motivated. And I mean, can you imagine if you're going to be shooting to kill? Normally, it's because you're going all in on something really important to you. And then when you see this kind of thing where some guy tries to threaten Putin, and then they let him off, and then he's in Belarus, you start to wonder what. And, oh, by the way, did you hear what he said?
What?
He said that thug Prigozhin. He said this war was started not for the reasons they're saying. This war was started just to enrich all the Russians, and the whole thing is a hoax. He said that, right? So what? You don't think some Russians are hearing that? Especially mothers of children. Yeah, exactly. So this is really bad propaganda. The Russians live on disinformation. They're always telling you the story that they want you to hear. So every time something comes out that isn't that, it's a major point, and it can cause
a lot of people like him.
problems.
He's a warrior. That Mr. P, I call him.
Oh, except that he's really. I mean, that guy used to. You know what he used to do? His life was to rob apartments.
Yeah, he was. Didn't they meet after he served prison time or something?
Yeah, he was in prison for
like a thug.
Oh, totally. He was in prison for being a thief, a crook. He looks like a thug. It's like Putin actually looks less thuggish than he does. He looks like a total thug, someone you don't want to meet in a dark alley under any circumstances, right?
Well, when he gets mad, when he showed that film of his men laying there, and it was because of Russia, he was spitting nails. So apparently the plan was he was coming in to take down a couple of those generals. And he thought some of the Russians would work with him, some of the army Russians or an oligarch or two. But apparently they didn't. They stood down. So he wasn't able to do it. And then they gave him that option. But now they're up and running in Belarus,
yeah.
Yeah, they're showing a satellite of the camps. I get a feeling Putin might have an overhead something, bomb those camps. That's what I'm getting a feeling of.
I mean, this goes both ways. Like a lot of the, people's upset with Russia is they've been interfering in the U.S., media system, government, whatever. But the U.S. is really aware of what they're doing too. I mean, I heard that the U.S. knew all about this. They just didn't interfere. And they've been spying on Russia like crazy.
And the same with China. We spy on China. China spies on us.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is the thing that often people think the U.S. is sleeping. They're not sleeping. I mean, they probably know everything you're doing. And
they watch these shows. I've already been told.
Really? Like the CIA is taking notes and
No,
saying,
years ago, there was a person I read who's a daughter of somebody in a high place, and she said, "Oh yeah, trust me, Linda, they know who you are." But I talk in favor of the Constitution and America, you know.
oh, totally. No, I think 100%.
And you know who else watches me a lot is Iran.
Interesting.
Isn't
Wow.
that interesting? Because they'll give you the numbers on YouTube, and Iran watches me. I was very surprised.
That could be people in Iran, though, more than
It
the
could
government
be.
of Iran. Yeah,
It
because
could
that's
be.
the thing. It just could be every country, no matter how, enslaved they are, they'll have progressive people that, tune into that part of the world, including in Russia. I bet you they set up their VPNs and,
And
use
get
these
in there,
tunnels
yeah.
and then they watch you. Yeah. So this is the thing, by the way, that the world today is very, very complicated for fascists because the information flows too quickly. It's tricky as hell. Back in the Second World War, you could create a story and nobody would find out.
Yep.
Yeah, but now it's very tricky, and people will always find a way to get at the truth. And one of the things is that back then you could tell all your people, "We're going to war, and you need to defend the country." Now they kind of look at you and go, "Really? What's the story you're telling me? I don't know if that's a good story. It sounds like maybe you're not telling me the truth." So then they won't go, right? And
well, listen, look at what they already did, what Putin already did. Remember that, what do you call those things that fly in the air?
Drones.
A drone was over a thing and there was a little blast, but you see these two men walking up. Putin tried to act like Ukraine had sent that drone. And then you see the video, it's like, it's a setup.
A setup. Yeah,
no, for sure. As plain as day. And he just recently said that Ukraine did something, blew some port or did something, or even that bridge. And they have the videos of Russia doing it.
Well, I mean, the other thing about, do you notice about Putin too, that the story is that he left town immediately when the guy was going up. So he's the opposite of Zelensky. Zelensky, when they threatened Ukraine, he said, "I don't want any place. I'm going anywhere. Just give me some weapons." He was going to stand firm and fight. Putin was going to run out of town, right? So there is his true character.
So we heard from Sarah. Somebody wrote me and said, "Hey, hi, Linda and Sterling." She accidentally hit the wrong one. I'm doing Sterling on Sunday. So Sarah, my question is about the Pluto return. The last time Pluto was nearby, we had the American Revolution. It certainly seems as if that influence is back. Is the revolutionary energy as powerful or more powerful for us as is the current return of the energy of the US Civil War? Thank you.
Well, remember that the last time Pluto was here is a little after the formation of the country. And the country is formed in 1776, doesn't really get a government going until the 1780s. That whole period is very progressive in that you're creating a new democracy. That's where Pluto was. That's not a bad thing. That's the establishment of a democracy. So it's not a problem. But it is true, when a planet like this returns after all these years, you get it being one of the contributors to turbulence. And it is not the only one. There's also Uranus and Neptune. There's a lot going on in there. So this is just to say, yeah, this period is not easy. What isn't obvious about that? We all know that. It's complicated. The country's really divided. But it is in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of the people. There are some problems around where corporations and tech could get a little bit too powerful, because that's also Aquarius. It's true. But overall, I just think it's a period you're going through where a lot of changes are happening, and I expect them to become good things, as the years are passing toward the end of the decade. That's how I would read it. Okay. But it's never comfortable. I mean, any person goes through a Pluto thing, they don't tell you, "Oh, that was just like a bed of roses, I had a Pluto transit and right away, everything." No, you kind of go through letting go of things, and you feel like, something, I got to let go of this and become something else. It's not easy. So the same with the country. That's the logic.
And right? We're not here just to go status quo. These things, these energies create us, hopefully for the better. Can I ask you, when 9/11 happened? Yeah. There's no planetary aspect that's the same as this, right?
No, but okay. 9/11, the most stark alignment is Saturn opposite Pluto, 9/11, which happened before in the 1960s. And you remember what that was like. People were getting assassinated. It was a very difficult period. So then 9/11, right? And then the next thing that is often as difficult is Saturn conjunct Pluto. So the two ends. Saturn conjunct Pluto, we just lived through. That was the pandemic, all that
was
stuff going on.
terrible.
Right. But now they're separating. Like, that's another reason to be optimistic, is normally planets, when they're too close together or making these big oppositions, that's when you see a lot of the trouble. And, we're moving away from it, but there are still some more to get through. It's
But
just that
you know
simple.
what? When you think about 9/11, it changed the whole consciousness of America.
True.
And then when you think about the pandemic and what happened, and all the lives that were lost, it changed me. It changed everybody, how you look at things.
It did, yeah. But then look at one of the pluses is that now more people work at home. So now, alone on that, that's a good contributor to the environment, because less people are putting cars on the road that would, they're maybe spending time at home instead, and so forth. So you always get good effects in, unexpected ways.
Right.
But the main thing is if you're moving away from the pressure, it's usually a good thing around world conditions, becoming more stable.
Right.
But we're still in it, right? I mean, look at all the different places in the world. You're getting all these mixed messages. Like, one side would be there are still people trying to be fascist. Marie Le Pen is in France in the background, but Sweden and Finland are joining NATO. That seems pretty good, right?
That seems real good.
Yeah. So there are strong counterpoints to all this. And I still think, the thing about people are always complaining, no one is ever happy. The US is the big dog in the world. And as far as empires go, believe me, you could do much worse than this. So stop complaining, okay? Because when you have this much power, just go back and look at the way the Romans used to deal with people. They didn't like what you were doing, you got put on the cross. And I'm not kidding around. That happened to Jesus and many others.
Yes. Yeah.
And the US that way doesn't behave that way. Is it a, pristine, angelic? No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, but I mean, everything is relative, right?
And look what the Americans did. They voted for a Democratic president.
Yeah.
That could have gone. They could have turned around and let that guy
turn around. Yeah, but
they knew there was trouble.
That's a pattern I found, because this is with the astrology. You look back, and I noticed going back all the way to the Civil War, whenever Saturn are in Aquarius and Pisces, where they are now, it's always a progressive administration. So you tell me, right? And that's what happened with Biden came in then, and he's still in that cycle. So, that's a pattern that's repeated not once, multiple times. You can go back, like Bill Clinton, you go back to the John F. Kennedy, Roosevelt, Teddy. Teddy was Republican, but he was really progressive. He was always against the exploitations of business. So he wasn't really
wasn't he the one too that said we got to take these big parks and make them monuments?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, exactly. So, and you can even go back to Ulysses S. Grant back in the.
Oh, I love my Ulysses.
Well, that was another period when Saturn in Aquarius and Pisces, repeatedly it does this, right? So these are good markers toward the idea that Democrats can win the next election. The other thing is this astrologer that was on, he did research. Now think about this, right? Logically, you think, okay, wait, he said in his research, Saturn in Aries, where it's going, at 25, corresponds to periods when they pass gun legislation. Now, are Republicans going to pass gun legislation? No. So what do you think that means? Okay, that's the logic. I mean, you got to pair the information with what you think is more likely to happen, right?
Right.
But I'm not telling you, don't take this and think that it's going to be smooth, because I suspect some unrest following. I think this is not going to be simple, because you know why? Because these guys, in the end, what they are is sore losers. They're sore losers.
God, you're not kidding.
They are sore losers. All of it is they don't want to accept losing, and so then they start threatening violence. That's the bottom line. If they don't.
So you're saying after the next administration is put in, they're going to start acting out.
Yeah, I would say we probably will have the first couple of years or more, constant.
Oh, and let me tell you too, I mean, they want to get rid of the FBI and the DOJ and the IRS. Let me tell you, these guys that are going to come out that would have voted for Trump and not vote for Trump.
That's true. That's the thing. Remember, it's all around the edges, because you're not going to get rid of the millions that follow this guy. And like I've said to a number of them on my channel, whenever they insult me, they'll put a thing, and I'll often reply and say, he's a shameful, vile human being, but you following him is even more shameful.
Oh, good for you.
Follow this person,
and then you block him, right?
yeah, then I block him. That is really sad. I mean, it's one thing for him to be a crook and a liar. I know that. I see him every day. But you, what are you doing following him? Honestly,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're convinced. So what can you say,
So, oh, listen, by the way, I'm reading this new book. It's actually an old book that I got about Eleanor Roosevelt, written by one of her children. And I'll be doggone. Who was the guy who became the vice president, who became president? Woodrow? No,
Truman.
Truman.
Yeah.
She had to go to the White House. I don't know how many times. She couldn't wait to get out of the White House, by the way. She had to go because Franklin never told him nothing. His own vice president. She knew information that was valuable to him. He didn't know about the bomb. He didn't know about nothing. She had to bring him up to date because Franklin, actually, as much as I love Franklin, he did a lot of inside stuff and moved monies without permission.
Yeah, no, he was definitely. Well, look, I mean, presidents, it's a very difficult post, and I had read things about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is Mr. Super Nice Guy, and he did a few, pretty dodgy things back then. Like there's the story of him carrying a briefcase with nothing in it just to pretend that he had his papers, things like that, right? So you got to expect some stuff. All the presidents.
They're human.
Yeah, they're
but
human.
He was president how many years?
Oh, a long time,
this was an uncanny time where he was working against white nationalists in Congress.
He was. I mean, people don't realize, when they think today, I was stunned when I saw the Rachel Maddow episodes, these podcasts where she was talking about they were fascists on the streets in the 40s. They were having rallies, way worse than now, where people were not even as alarmed as they are now. So, of course,
they didn't want Jewish people to come in.
Exactly.
And these poor people were dying. It's awful.
Yeah, it's always like that. I mean, this is the thing, that you can't have a Trump unless there's a sector of the population that resonates with that. And another historical example is that guy that was a total racist, Wallace, in Alabama back in the 60s. He ran a campaign on regular issues, like he brought up taxes, this and that, didn't get anything. And then he realized that if he talked about the N-word, he said, then they start stomping on the floor. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So he ran on segregation. He had run against segregation. In the next campaign, he read, no, we should segregate everybody. So this means a lot of people think this way. That's Trump's genius. Trump realized there's a black guy in the White House. I can exploit that. That's what he did. Yeah. He knew there are all these people
that carried the Bible upside down, acting like he was a Christian.
Exactly, which is completely brutal because it's just so unfair to, the color of a person's skin. Obama, white or black, he's just a really smart guy with a really
very smart. Oh, they couldn't stand that.
No, they couldn't stand them. No, they couldn't stand the man. I know. But by the way,
he won twice.
He won twice. And Obama's statement is the thing for people always to remember. He said that in his book, and he brought it up. The idea is that we are always working toward becoming a more perfect union. It's a work in progress, right?
Yes.
Right now it's pretty divided, but that's the logic, is become more the United States. Right now we're the disunited States. We're kind of stuck in this, weird pattern where the red states think
we will grow. Let me tell you, we will grow from this. That which doesn't kill us, we will grow. So what do you see about Netanyahu? He's sure acting out.
Netanyahu, he had, well, let me put it this way. He's still, because of he's a late Libra, very late Libra. So the Pluto doesn't get out of there until 2024, late in 24. So that's going to constantly keep him off balance. And I think his future is badly tarnished. I don't think he'll ever be the same that he was. Once that he lost that one election and so forth. But in the meantime,
and then there was questions if he really won.
Well, of course, yeah. But then those, unless they get resolved, he'll stay there and so forth. But I wouldn't worry about Netanyahu. I think.
Well, even the army was going to work against him if he dared. What was he trying to do? He was trying to make himself all powerful.
He was trying to basically defang. He was trying to change the court. He was trying to do something that would alter the Constitution to basically serve himself. But he got opposed pretty hard. So, he had to pull back.
Including the military.
Yeah.
So Fabulous Woman says, what does the upcoming moon in Capricorn mean for those with Capricorn in their sign?
Well, the main thing about that moon in Capricorn is that it's a full moon in Capricorn.
When is that?
It's not long from now. The moon is in Scorpio right now. It's going to be in Sagittarius tomorrow, Saturday. By Sunday, Monday, in there, that's the full moon in Capricorn. So if you're a Capricorn, it affects you more. If your signs, your planets are close to that, even more so. The full moon is, what I always notice about the full moon is, I always get some clear inspiration, clear vision of something, but I also almost always notice a crash, a point where, I lose my energy, and it's very difficult to keep the energy up the whole time.
For
I'm still
Capricorns
studying
or all signs?
for all signs, but especially Capricorns in this particular moon. But if you're a Capricorn, if anything, treat it as a more special moon, because it can bring in more revelations for you. It'll bring in some clarity, something that you've been trying to understand, and that it's better to have it there than not, right? That's the logic. Now, okay, wait a second. The back story to that, though, is if in your life there's something brewing around the relationship or something that is looking pretty dicey, that is when it could explode. So I'm warning you in advance, because the full moon, that's when people start yelling and screaming. Didn't this happen to you as a nurse? That I hear that nurses realize when the moon is full, and then the hospital starts to.
Oh, yes, we had, especially L&D. Women went into labor with a full moon.
Yeah, exactly.
But we got a lot of gunshots and stuff. It was really funny. We had my specialty, because I was an L&D nurse who also worked in the ER. They'd always give me room 27, which was the GYN room. That's one time a woman's stomach was hurt, and we did a urine test on her, and she was pregnant. And I told the intern, she's positive she's pregnant. And he went back there, and he came back and he said, "You're going to have to talk to her, Linda. She's totally arguing with me." And so we go back there. I said, "Hi, sweetie." And I said, "Did the doctor tell you?" She said, "Yeah, he said I never had no sexual intercourse." I said, "Well, did you ever F?" "Yeah." "Well, you're pregnant." And then another time, a woman, she had batteries up there, and she said she did that to keep herself charged. So we had this GYN room, which you can imagine it was pretty tough. Like, boy, on a full moon, we had them coming, and a lot of gunshots.
No, full moon can be funny too. One time, many years ago, I'm in this, with this group of people, and we're supposed to meet, and everyone came in, and the moon was full, and they parked sideways. Instead of parking, just as a joke, one person parked sideways, and then they all followed and parked sideways. And that meant that some people couldn't park. And then there was this big fight, inside. "Why did you do that?" And they're screaming at each other, "Put the cars back." And I remember thinking,
"Oh my goodness.
Full moon."
That's full moon.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but I've been in this mood for Sir Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thomas. I've been watching Remains of the Day and all those old shows that I loved back in the day. I don't know why. All of a sudden I'm in the mood to watch them.
Those are good actors. By the way, that is another, it's not a big deal, but a Capricorn moon in full. Capricorn is historical, the past, tradition. So that would fit with, old film stars.
With all the old films.
Did
you hear about Madonna?
Madonna, and I looked at her chart. It's pretty dicey. She's got some problems, and it's probably some kind of sepsis or some kind of major infection, because she's got not one, but more. There are 3 different Saturn, I think Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. There's a lot going on, and that could mean that even if she leaves the hospital, she's not feeling well for quite a while as a result. Yeah,
because she canceled her big last show, and she had all that work done. It had nothing to do with sepsis from any of that. Do you think? Or
I don't know, but I know that there's some Scorpio energy in there. Scorpio and sepsis energy, they do go together. And you see also in astrology, the 12th sign, if it shows up in the context of that, that's when you go to the hospital, because it's a serious thing. The 12th is, okay, you got to go.
She's been intubated twice.
Yeah, exactly. So the problem with this is that when you're in cycles that don't end right away, Matter of fact, that Venus retrograde in her chart, that thing that I mentioned correlates with the law in the American chart, or in Trump's with his 8-year, whatever. In her chart, it's the hospital house, right? So
Oh,
I'm guessing she's probably going to have to go back at some point to do more tests or spend more time.
I'm sure, because she's go, but she's older now. And she's doing this big, huge event. God bless her, she can do it. But she probably wore herself down and was just susceptible.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is when you're that busy and that caught up in the movement of your life, you're going to take more chances and ignore basic things, and then it doesn't take much to catch something. All you have to do is
my Venus is in Leo. Am I in trouble?
Yeah, because for you this is important too, because your Venus in Leo, it's a place where in your chart is where you relate to groups of people, your friends, your associations. So there's some kind of going back and recalibrating that and figuring out who your friends are and who maybe aren't. That kind of thing.
I was going to talk to you, Andre.
That's when you're going to tell me, okay, Andre, listen.
I got some land to sell you back in Tennessee.
Yeah, you were my friend, but not anymore.
So here's a good one. And then probably this is the last one. Can you believe we're almost at an hour?
I know our talks are
but we enjoy ourselves so much. Oh, well, let me read two real quick. Let me just read this one out loud. Mark Meadows seems to be cooperating with Jack Smith's investigation. Is he in protective custody, witness relocation? By the way, things are falling into place regarding Trump and traitors.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, what's your sense? What do you see?
Oh, Mark Meadows is toast. I saw that a while ago, but because he's giving state's witness, so to speak, he's going to manage to slide out. I'll tell you who else is going to slide out is McCarthy, because McCarthy wasn't in on the actual January 6th. He was the one on the phone tell Trump to do something, screaming at Mark Meadows. He wasn't part of this. Marjorie Taylor Greene was, and Boebert and Matt Gaetz and all of those. But I see, what's his face? He won't be the leader anymore, but McCarthy sliding out. I see Mark Meadows made a deal, but he'll have to hide. And I see Lindsey Graham managing to keep himself out of hot water.
Yeah, and yet, all these people, Lindsey Graham included, has a ton of pressure well into next year because of the way his planets are. McCarthy may escape the wrath of the prosecution, but his situation is not good at all for months still to come. It's very complicated.
He won't be able to hold any kind of title.
It's really hard. And Meadows, I think, suffered more in 21 and 22, probably when he was being investigated and so forth. It's actually a little easier now, but it's still not clear. He may end up, some of these people, they may still get jail time. They did something really awful, and don't be surprised. And the one that is, I think, completely screwed is Giuliani. That guy is screwed.
Giuliani's a guy. Oh my God.
Yeah, because what I've been hearing in conjunction with where the Saturn cycle is, not good because.
How do you feel about him showing up with Jack Smith? Do you think Trump was upset by that?
I'm sure Trump is, but to Trump, if you don't follow what he says, then you're a rat. So this is like John Gotti. Trump is the mob boss. It's remarkable to me. And
I'm surprised Trump hasn't had people taken out. If it was Putin, he would have been taken out.
Yeah, well, that's if it were Putin. I mean, Trump would want that kind of thing, but I mean, I don't know. Do you think that's next? I hope not.
No. I think he's actually. Well, you know what I think? I think Putin is chicken. I think Putin showed his true colors. He's a big guy on campus, a little short guy, trying to act like king for a day. And when he was really placed against the wall, he gets all scared.
Well, yes, and I would agree with you. And I would also advise Prigozhin not to walk around the balconies or near windows, just in case.
Oh, well, I see some sort of boom, boom, boom. I think they're going to blow them up. And they're going to get those camps because they don't want them taking it upon themselves. They don't want them to get bigger.
Right. But if that's the case, then wouldn't that be Putin's orders? I mean,
that would be Putin's orders.
So then that's the thing. I mean, he can still play the tough guy. I do agree with you. And at the same time, he's kind of a thug. I mean, the way he solves problems is to
I'm
you know,
not, I'm
poison
not
you.
saying he doesn't deserve it, but Putin is scared of him, so he'll get rid of him.
Yeah, no, that's sure. That makes total sense to me. Yeah.
Okay, last question from Beverly. What's going to happen to Jim Jordan? Will Ohio be rid of him in politics soon?
You know, that one I don't see that clearly. I think with Jim Jordan, and just I only have his day chart. My feeling of him is that you can't get rid of him. You can only, if they lose the house, he becomes the auctioneer. You know, he talks the fast. He becomes the auctioneer on the other side making noise. It's kind of like all these people that now, because they're there, they get to say nonsense. And then if they're in the minority again, then they won't. And that's about as much as you can hope
But you
for.
saw that they are allowing those young boys who were molested to go back to court, and Jim Jordan is part of that.
Yeah, well, no, and I mean, and it may affect him some. I wish I had his birth time. Maybe I could say more about the fact that something like that could happen. The last time I looked, to me, it looked like someone who was just a major troublemaker, and he's a little bit like Ted Cruz. You know, he's
just blubbering.
You can't get rid of the guy. All you can do is push him out of power so he does less damage, kind of thing. But other than that, yeah,
you don't see him going to jail or anything.
Who, Jordan?
Yeah.
Well, do you? Because I don't.
I mean, don't. No.
Yeah. No. If you don't, I mean, I know.
I see Kushner going to jail. I see. I don't see Ivanka going to jail. I see the boys, Eric and Donald Jr. I see, you know, the people like Boebert and all those guys.
So let me ask you something. Do you concur with this thing? Because when I looked at the Trump thing in 24, he's got a real health problem there, a real health threat.
I've always felt, I had the dream. That's why I started this channel. The guides gave me this dream. Well, the guides also told me I had to do the channel, but I had the most vivid. It wasn't even like a dream. It was like stepping into another universe where he was in a glass coffin, dead as a doornail. And it was a big shopping center, but nobody was gathering to look at him. There was lights on him. And I remember walking up to his body, and he had like a waxy look, like linen. And I said, oh my God, he's really dead. And I looked around and I see people walking, but nobody was coming up to the coffin.
You got to put up for entertainment purposes only. The sign is flashing now to everyone. Yeah, no, like, well, I mean, I've been saying it for the longest time because he's constantly traveling with threatening energies, and they get worse. They don't get better. They really coalesce on him. And I have a hard time believing that the way, you know, he always has this bravado, whatever, but it's got to be really high pressure to be.
And he's always angry, and he's always going in circles. And, you know, it feels like he'll blow a gasket or something. And there's plenty of astrologers besides you and other readers who have said his health is so bad.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, that's the thing that, it's like he's kind of on the brink, in my opinion, you know. Not to mention that it's pretty clear to me, you know, there was one person on my channel, the person said, I couldn't believe it. She said, well, Trump does not drink and doesn't do any drugs, and that is very, in capitals, spiritual, right? And I immediately thought, oh, you mean like how he doesn't do Adderall? Because I think this guy has been using speed for years.
Oh, you can,
some form of speed.
You can hear him snorting.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so then you think, well, which drugs are you referring to? And that also puts pressure on your system, and you can eventually get a nerve event, because if you keep stimulating the nerves like that day after day, one day they give out, you know, that's just what it is. And the older you are, the more dangerous it is. So there's that.
Did you mention that to her?
I just threw her out. I didn't have time to reply because I thought, I'm not going to talk. If I say anything, she'll say something back.
You can't talk sense to them. The other thing is those constant hamburgers.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I know, exactly. I mean, it's not exactly, I mean, Chris Christie's right. I mean, please, come on, look in the mirror.
Yeah, he said, have you looked in the mirror?
Yeah, because this.
And, you know, he had the doctors lie about his weight.
Oh, for sure. I know. They lie about everything. I know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my friend, we are at an hour, exactly.
Excellent.
And I'm not dead yet.
Okay.
Okay.
We shall meet again.
We shall meet again. So next Thursday, your channel.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Talk to you later.